Good evening, everybody. First, I'd like to thank everybody for coming here this evening. This is the 19th year, as most of you know, of the 9/11 tragedy that was inflicted upon our country. And we, unfortunately, in the town of East Brunswick, suffered the loss of 8 individuals whose names are memorialized on the monuments behind us. The goal here is to try to keep this not so formal and to try to take in the solemnness of the occasion that we're actually memorializing today. Clearly, there were thousands of American lives that were lost. And while that may seem, for those of you who weren't alive then, a small number compared to the number of people that died in the tragedy that we're facing right now, this was an attack on our country. And the people that were in those buildings that day weren't expecting to be heroes. They didn't expect to be memorialized. They were doing what every one of us do every day, and that was to show up to work and live the American dream, and that was taken from them. So the reason that we're here today, the reason that we celebrate every year at this time, is to remember what we sacrificed, what we lost, and to put all of that into some perspective. I'm going to ask Assemblywoman Nancy Pinkin and our council members to come forward as we all recite the names of the individuals who were lost. We have with us today Assemblywoman Nancy Pinkin, who is from East Brunswick herself. We have Council Vice President Sharon Sullivan, Councilman Kevin McAvoy, and Councilman Michael Spadafino. With that having been said, the 8 members from our community that were lost was Suni Ang, Susan Blair, Paul Inella, U.R. Guillen, Alan David Kleinberg, Stuart Lewis, Suzanne Pissarro, and Kenneth W. Van Auken. With that, let's just have a moment of silence. Thank you. Recognizing that this was the first year where our high school students are all individuals that were born after the events of 9/11, I asked and put out to them the opportunity to write an essay. And the essay question was as follows. The people listed on our East Brunswick 9/11 memorial are different from all others mentioned or celebrated in our memorial park. None of these individuals woke up on the morning of 9/11/2001 expecting to be heroes, and none of them expected to be memorialized. You are the first complete group of high school students to have been born after this tragic, horrific event in American history. What message or lesson can your generation of youth gain from this sad chapter in our history? What would you tell these individuals about our country, your generation of Americans, and our future that could possibly provide hope worthy of the sacrifice they made? So with that, I'm going to call one at a time. First, Ashley Lax.
On September 11, 2001, the entire country was confronted with the grim news that lives were lost due to a colossal and coordinated terrorist attack. Spouses were widowed and children were orphaned. Healthy bodies were compromised by the wreckage and harsh tragedies of the crashing of buildings, along with other devastating events that irrevocably scarred a nation. Through this soul-wrenching event in our country's history, my generation has been taught to wholly value the message of how imperative safety and security is to a nation and its people. Whilst assuring the legacies of those lost, we have strived to ensure that there is hope in America's youth and future. It is universally recognized that we learn through our mistakes. This sense of invulnerability in our country in 2001 was barraged with the ruthless reality of disastrous terrorist attack, which harshly snatched precious American lives on 9/11. Through this tragic event, future generations were exposed to some cruel realities of the world from a younger age. We are now raised with a great consciousness of personal and communal safety and security, and of our country's need to provide it to their citizens. Since we grew up in a post-9/11 world that was conscious of all threats, American youth is now forever aware of the importance in the importance of airport security, safety checks, and mass gatherings, and even the protocols implemented in our own schools. No matter how burdensome some procedures may seem, we are cognizant that it is for our individual protection. Many brave men and women courageously sacrificed their lives for the future of America on 9/11. Their selflessness and bravery will never be forgotten. Their memories are sustained both in the backs of the survivors and the rest of our nation. Myself and my peers have enormous respect for them and have venerated them through our devotedness to safety, along with our awareness of danger and terrorism. As a community, we have constructed efforts against hate and have banded together collectively to produce a strong and gallant front. The United States' future is bright due to its sensible and sympathetic juvenility. We may not be able to get back the honored souls who were regrettably taken from us on 9/11. However, we can best memorialize them by the prevention of future losses. My generation, unlike the ones before us, have the benefit of growing up with an acute safety awareness like never before. We may be less sheltered and more accustomed to the perils of this world, though our knowledge saves lives every day. William Wordsworth once remarked, "Life is divided into three terms, that which was, which is, and which will be. Let us learn from the past to profit by the present to live better in the future."
Thanks, Ashley. The next student is Julia Malling.
Life is ephemeral and ethereal. I always mix up the two words, but in this case, both apply. There are experiences to learn from, people to meet, and so much of life to live. Every moment must be cherished, because you never know when you will be living your last. That is something I learned when 3 years ago I visited the National September 11 Memorial and Museum in New York City. I was surrounded by debris. The debris of the World Trade Center, of fire trucks, and of shattered hearts and the moving stories of innocent people on that day. So many people remember exactly where they were, what they were doing, and who they were with on that day. Some were too young to understand what was happening, but remember the emotional storm that surrounded them. I, as well as the rest of today's high school students, was not alive at all, but I know stories. I know stories of people whose eyes were waterfalls for weeks on end. I know stories of a nation in mourning, of Americans coming together, rebuilding their country and each other after tragedy struck. I will never know what life was like on September 11, 2001, but I and all other Americans, present and future, will always know what life is like because of the sacrifices these heroes made on that day. To know that some people lost the next months, the next years, the next decades of their lives due to senseless violence, and that so many of those people willingly gave their lives so that other people could have more time, well, what is there to do except do everything we can with what they gave us, and hope that what we do is worthy of the sacrifices they made.
Thanks, Julia. Next student is Savika Mandela.
On September 11, 2001, my father walked down late to New York City to head to his job. He worked in the Twin Towers. When arriving, he was met with one of the most scarring, painful experiences of his life, even to this day. While he had been able to escape and only sustained minor injuries, not everyone else was as fortunate. On this day 19 years ago, the United States of America lost nearly 3,000 beautiful lives to what would be known as one of the worst days in our nation's history. On this day, we grieve. On this day, we remember. But most importantly, on this day, we hope. Being the first complete group of high schoolers to have been born after this horrific event, there's much to learn and listen to from this sad chapter in our history. Despite our struggles and our differences, we can understand that no matter what, we are all united by a powerful bond of humanity. We can learn the importance of being there for people when they need it the most. We learn the importance of listening to others, not just when pandemonium hits, but when the rest of the world is silent. We learn the importance of being united, even when you feel anything but. Let us not forget that even in the darkest of moments, Americans have shown better than we could have ever anticipated. When we remember the lives lost to this tragedy, let us not forget the immeasurable bravery our firefighters showed when they ran into burning towers, rescuing countless people without the slightest hesitation. When we remember the lives lost to this tragedy, let us not forget the citizens who diverted plane attacks in an effort to prevent more lives and buildings from being destroyed. When we remember the lives lost to this tragedy, let us not forget the unceasing strength and solidarity that our people have displayed, coming together as one. When it felt like all hope was lost, we became each other's hope. When we felt that all our strength was gone, we became each other's strength. And when we felt more lost than ever, we became each other's place of unity. As Rudy Giuliani once said, the attacks of September 11th were intended to break our spirit. Instead, we have emerged stronger and more unified. We feel renewed devotion to the principles of political, economic, and religious freedom, the rule of law, and respect for human life. We are more determined than ever to live our lives in freedom. To this generation of youth and onwards, I tell you all that while this day was filled with grief and sorrow, it was filled with sacrifice, courage, and resilience. America, as always, has persevered, because on this day, we learn a renewed definition of America. A country that, even in its darkest moments, has shined the brightest and was able to rely on our citizens. A country that has unceasing strength and even stronger citizens. Thank you.
And the last speaker today is Brianna Perez.
Imagine waking up to the sound of window shattering, people screaming, and sirens wailing. Imagine waking up to the smell of smoke in the air. Imagine waking up to see a plane crash into the North Tower. Some people here today lived through this tragic event. Sadly, many lives were lost this day. The individuals being celebrated here today sacrificed their lives to save others and have earned the title of hero. These heroes in this event have taught people to plan for the unexpected and adapt if necessary, as well as show that the future is truly unpredictable. 9/11 is something that people can learn from. This generation of youth has not lived through the events of 9/11 like their parents might have, or their parents' parents. Although they have not experienced it firsthand, they know the reality of this unfortunate situation, that it was a worst-case scenario come true. Everybody has envisioned a worst-case scenario. Basically, the worst thing that could happen in any situation. Whether it be a parent dropping their child off at the mall to hang out with their friends, a teen going on a dangerous roller coaster, or a kid walking home from school for the first time. Of course, these things are not as dire as the events that happened on 9/11. Even though what happened on 9/11 is unlikely to occur again, it teaches two important lessons. The first is to plan for the unexpected. People were not prepared for the plane to be overtaken, nor were they prepared for it to be crashed into a North Tower. But that leads to the second lesson: adapt when necessary. Although they weren't perfectly prepared, firefighters, police, medics, and more were able to adapt to the situation and save lives, even if they were putting their own at risk. This generation should learn to both plan for the unexpected and be ready to adapt when it happens. If there was one message that this essay could get across, not only to the people here today, but to the individuals that sacrificed their lives, it is that there is hope. But there is no guarantee of anything that is going to happen in the future. There is no guarantee of hope. But what is hope? The dictionary states that hope is a feeling of expectation and desire for a certain thing to happen. Hope is a feeling, and feelings tend to come and go. They change with a snap of a finger. But hope is a powerful thing. So is the future. Clarence Darrow once said that history repeats itself, and that's one of the things wrong with history. But that can actually be a good thing. History is like a mirror where people go to reflect on the past. But when looking in a mirror, it's hard to see anything but the bad. History encompasses many terrible and tragic events, but that's not all. For example, the legalization of gay marriage, landing on the moon, and the heroic efforts displayed by the individuals on 9/11 who are being celebrated here today. These are common people who change America for the better. With a whole new generation of possible heroes, what is preventing them from changing this country for the better and providing hope that is worthy of the sacrifices made on 9/11? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So it's fair to say that there's most definitely hope for this generation, for this country, and for a future that is worthy of the sacrifices made 19 years ago today. 9/11 was a tragic event that has taught people many things. The individuals being celebrated here today showed that although it is important to plan for the unexpected, it is even more crucial to adapt if the situation ever does come. Nobody could have predicted the events that happened on this day, but these individuals are heroes for sacrificing their own lives to save others. If Clarence is right and history does repeat itself, then more heroes are to come. But if he's wrong, it doesn't matter. Where there is bad, there is good. So whatever happens in the future, there will always be good, even if it takes a little uncovering. Thank you.
How about a round of applause for our kids? They were really great. I want to tell you a story about a friend of mine. His name is Mac. He worked on the 88th floor of the North Tower and was there on 9/11. He's an engineer and was to work early because that's just his nature. And when the tower was hit, his initial thought was a generator must have gone out, something. No one would have thought a plane hit the building. But eventually it came to realize that that is exactly what happened, and two of his friends did what they can to try to get out of the building, but their nature was to try to save lives. And so what they did was they went around the 88th floor that they were on and tried to make sure that they got everybody out, and that before they left that there was no one left behind. And they found somebody screaming from behind a door that was jarred, and they couldn't really get it open, but the three of them got together and were able to unjar the door and found an 89-year-old man who was locked in a room and obviously couldn't get out. And he carried him on his shoulders down to the 78th floor, and then the two friends of his that were with him told him that you keep going down, we're just going to stay here and make sure that if there's anybody else, we'll help get them down, but take him down, he needs help. So Mac carried this 89-year-old man on his back down 89 flights to the bottom of the towers, and was able to, with whatever strength was left with him, there was chandeliers that were falling, there was a foot of water already in the building, and he made his way out, got to the police. The police were able to take care of the 89-year-old man, who did survive. And within less than a minute, the building came down, leaving behind the two friends who had stayed there to try to save other lives. And he talks about this regularly. Most of you might know Mac, because that event changed his life and made him realize that there might be another calling in life. We know him here in East Brunswick as Mark, Father Mark Hanna, who is the lead priest at the Coptic Church here in East Brunswick on Riva. So my message to the young people here who were not alive on 9/11, we're living in such strange times. We're living in the middle of a pandemic. We haven't had that in 100 years. I don't think there's anybody here who was there for the last one, or you look really good. We're here in the middle of a recession or a depression, depends on what you want to call what we're in right now. You need 2 quarters of negative growth to call it a recession, and the difference between a recession and a depression is really just a degree. So we're in one or the other. Haven't had that back since the, whether you call it the Great Recession in 2008 or the Depression in 1929. We're living in the middle of racial injustice and civil discourse on racism in this country. Haven't had those type of discussions since the civil rights riots of the 1960s. So you're living in really unbelievable times. These are the times that force people to sometimes rethink their mission, their goal, their purpose in life, just like it did for Father Mark on the day of 9/11. So I'm hoping that in this time of reflection, that those of you that are here that weren't around on 9/11 look at the times that you're in as an opportunity to introspect and to self-reflect and to try to figure out what your purpose really is in life, because I believe that everybody deserves second chances and everybody has an opportunity to make a difference. So with that, I want to thank everybody for coming here today. 9/11 is too important for us to ever forget and leave behind, and I'm glad that everybody who was here today came to give honor to those that have been lost. Before everybody leaves, I'd like to please give a round of applause to those first responders who are here today. They are truly our heroes. They were heroes then, they're heroes now, and we owe them our respect. So thank you.